back to another devlog. This is number 34. Um, this week on Monday, I started off. I really wanted to get the lighting working for the bakery package. So basically, what was going wrong? I was doing some testing and so I was trying to figure out how to not get the second playthrough on bakery. For some reason, the second playthrough, everything would turn up super bright. Everything would look white and washed out. It was some sort of error or bug, but basically, through a lot of testing, I figured out it really happens as soon as you do another like bake operation on top of the bakery bake. Say if you bake your adaptive light probes, or you bake you bake in the reflection probes on the second run, it'll always come back. Um, so I had to really kind of do a lot of testing. I still want to keep bakery because it really looks better in general. And it bakes faster. It doesn't have a lot of these artifact issues that the built-in Unity lighting system does. With the built-in Unity, I was constantly having issues. Um, you have to get everything perfectly right. Like you have to have like a point one on between this bakery package. Even though there's some artifacts in the editor, it always runs clean. You never really see anything. So, and in my opinion, it just looks a lot better. Um, so, um, I figured out I could do without baked reflection probes. Um, those I don't think those really have a runtime cost. They have like a one-time cost on startup to calculate and emit light, but they don't have an ongoing runtime cost. So I could do real-time reflection probes. I wanted to keep adaptive light probes so I could do shadow masks like I did before. But Bakery does not work with adaptive light probes. You always get that washed out issues. No matter what I try, this that. So I tried every darn combination of settings in the book of this package to get it to work, and it just won't. Um, so my original idea was to kind of rely on baked lighting for static objects like this obstacle here. Um, and other environmental objects. I was able to get magic light probes working, but the problem is when I where is it? Here. When I was going into the shadow, you could really clearly see like this. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't like he was in the shadow and then he maintained a consistent tone. He would based on how close he was to a probe, he would grow brighter and dimmer, brighter and dimmer and brighter. So it's no good at all, really, with magic light probes or with uh, adaptive light probes. It just won't work. So I can have baked shadows, but the big problem is like I can have baked shadows, but not have them work with dynamic player shadows. So it really comes down to like either or that I can figure. Like when I try to show these dynamic player shadows, over, let's just say this was baked, the actual light would wash out this baked shadow, and like I just can't get both. So it's like I basically have to rely on you know, shadow mask sucks, and baked lights, like you can't really do real-time dynamic shadows with baked lights. So if I'm clever with my optimization, I can get away with it, but I just don't know. Shadows are expensive, and if you have a lot of stuff in the scene casting a lot of shadows, it's really going to chew up cycles. Um, So yeah, so I've tried this and that and everything, and I mean I got it to a point after spending the whole day. I've concluded I've got it pretty much as good as I can get it. You know, I've completely run out of ideas of like what I can do, this and that. I've tried basically about everything to get shadows as optimized as possible. Um, I just don't know anything more that I can do, like without actually, you know, cutting the quality. This is the top benchmark. Without actually cutting this quality, I don't know how I can perform for, you know, further my performance. I might have to, given the situation. I might have to selectively, you know, curate shadows here and there. I don't know. But as of now, it's still, you know, under budget for, as long as I can control, you know, the current shadows and not have shadows calculating in different parts of the scene that are not needed, but basically, you know, right where the camera is and the action's happening. Um, so I'm going with bakery for indirect and real-time shadows for objects and obstacles and NPCs and players. So, um, yeah, if there was an easy support tutorial that showed me, you know, here's the ideal way to do something while still making it look good, you know, I would have done something like that. And you know, if I had any more ideas of what I could try, I would go for it. And maybe something would come up in the future that would give me an idea of further optimization. But I'm pretty much there with the optimization. This was the last day on Monday that I spent, you know, really finalizing the optimization as best as I can possibly get it. Um, so, um, So on Tuesday, I turned back to the occlusion. I was having occlusion issues when when I was going over here. Odd things were happening, like this wasn't showing up. But basically, it really just boiled down to making this front wall a non-occluder and then rebaking the occlusion, and everything started working fine again. Um, um, Okay, yeah. I turned back to so I was doing a little testing on performance, and I wasn't really happy with the performance of the shadows in other sectors. So basically, when the thing loads, I have what is it? The adjacent neighbors. So all these sectors, shadows was still on, and that was too much still. I really needed a way to kind of, you know, keep the sector shadows that the shadows that the sector that I'm in on, but also, um, you know, disable all the shadows in the other sectors because the camera's not really there, I'm not really there. You know, I just want them off. But how do you do that? Say if you have a connecting, if you have a connecting you know, the shadow problem. If you go to a different sector, all of a sudden you go to a sector and then, you know, this shadow cuts off, and then the other shadow turns off. You get this weird effect where it's like the previous shadow disappears and this shadow pops into existence, you know, because it's turning on and off shadows. So how do you fix that problem with having optimization? Well, my first idea was to take this character here and say, okay, put a sphere around him, and you know, a big large sphere, right? And if it hits one of these lights, then turn the shadow on. You know, do a, you know, kind of a collision detection, you know. So any light that you hit, turn shadows on, and then if it's not within the circle, then turn the shadows off. That was kind of an interesting idea. I worked with that a bit, but it didn't really work. It didn't work very well. Um, so I finally came up with a better solution based off that idea. So basically, I put a sphere around the character, and let's see if I can. Yeah, basically, it's a large sphere, but basically what it does, it interacts with these sector portals, and if it hits one of these sector portals, it'll say, "Hey, um, turn this sector's shadows on." So you'll have this sector that you're in, and also this sector's shadows on before you get to that point. There's a big enough space to where it's on. It's like a buffer zone. So it'll turn it on, and then when you cross over, it'll already be on, so you won't see that shadows turning off and on. And then at the opposite side, when it exits the portal, you're far enough away from these shadows in this room to where then it'll disable shadows for this sector. So it's kind of like a sector shadow enabler, and this works pretty good. And that really kind of solved my, really got a hold on, any sort of shadows anywhere else. It keeps all the shadows off everywhere else, but only into the sector that you're in and that you're going in. And it even works with these narrow sectors right here. It'll turn this sector on and this sector on at the same time because it's big enough. So um, that definitely helped with the shadow issue I was having. Um, so that was Tuesday, and so I started, that was done. I finally turned back on Wednesday. I finally turned back to working on the camera confiner, the camera confiner 2.0. My previous attempt was really a shoddy, homegrown, and reinvent the wheel mess. I pretty much was taking this wall, taking its mesh, duplicating the mesh in code and moving it forward to kind of restrain the camera and and it was just too many edge cases. I was doing a state machine and it was really flimsy and I just couldn't add on top of it. So decided to scrap that whole thing. It's like, yeah, if you're doing a state machine, you're getting into the complexity, you're probably doing it wrong. So I tried my hand again and I started working with the camera and I was like, okay, let's just put a collider on the camera, wherever it is, and let's use the uh, let's use the mesh colliders of this room that we already have, right? Let's kind of work a little bit with rigid bodies. Well, you know, um, so I was working with the AI to try to, you know, work with like a sphere collider, and I was working with the Invector camera system and building it on top of that, building that confiner functionality on top of that. And after a bunch of work later, I realized I was really just wasting time trying to reinvent the wheel. I mean, the collision detection it was so janky, and it just like it would not do what I want. It would fly through the wall. There's just so many issues. It just like, there's no way, right? Um, so, so what I decided to do, I had this idea earlier because I already worked with Cinema Machine and they had a 2D confiner, and I was like, okay, why don't we just try Cinema Machine? Let's try out their 3D confiner. Let's see if I can get it to work. And so the Invector camera system, it's always worked good enough to keep it around, and to do your basic testing and just a good camera, it's good enough. But building my own confiner logic functionality from scratch is just not easy. Not easy at all. Why would you bother when there's already something out there? So I tried some machine, and I was pretty much glad I did. I had some experience working with the system, and the Confiner 3D did not disappoint. So it kind of worked like a charm. I'll kind of demo that here. So here now I have a system where like this whole room pretty much. You can take a look. This room, it is here, and we have pretty much just a simple box collider, and I've been able to set up a bunch of tools that you can kind of input your settings and say, okay, inset the confiner, 5 from the left, 5 from the right, or a little bit back from the near wall to give the camera a little bit of room to move. And you click a generate button, and it'll pop the correct confiner in there. So working a lot setting up these tools, but at the end of the day, it really does do what I want it to do. Now, I have the same effect here where if you go close to the wall, you'll see the camera stops, and it's like a dead zone now. That's cool. So my original idea was, okay, for transitioning from a higher height ceiling to a lower height ceiling, I don't want to do anything fancy like a janky uh, collider, or the janky clipping of the Invector system was not doing it for me. I was saying, like, let's do something like a Zelda where you're still blocked on the wall, but you can go through the door, and when you trigger the sector, it'll tell the camera, okay, now move in one fluid directional motion through the wall to the point of the next confiner area. So now you have a confiner on this wall too, and it'll work in reverse. And you get this nice smooth transition. No more no more choppy, janky, crappy camera. This works like a real charm. A nice ease in, ease out to the next area. You know. And it took some doing to set up colliders for the 4 walls, and it pretty much works great for the most part in these cases. See how it kind of just goes to the lower height. It doesn't really mess around. It's nice and smooth. That's just, I was so happy when I got this working. I was like, oh yes, it's so good. Um, uh, so that was all great, but just like every system, this system has its limitations, and I was about to find out exactly how, I was about to kind of run into a wall with this system. I'd figure out later on down the line, but let's see. So on Thursday I completed the rest of the basic camera transitions for the four corners, or the 4 main hallways here. It was looking good, and so let's go over here. There was an interesting case where on Thursday I did these hallways, but now it's like, okay, let's do these hallways now, right? And just setting up the basic transitions, it was okay, but I wasn't satisfied with just okay, because it would hold and transition at this sector junction here, just like it would with this room. But I didn't really want that. I kind of wanted if you go around a corner, it would act like there would still be confiners in place where the camera could go, but there wouldn't be this kind of transition. It would be kind of, like it would just be a smooth around the corner, no issue really. How do you do that, right? But so um, let's see. So functionality. Yeah. So the problem I ran into before, I was able to set up a confiner, say, for this room. That's fine. But how do you set up a confiner for this hallway? Um, so my idea was to take, this section, get a box collider, and then over here get another box collider. So two box colliders, and then make that into a mesh, and then make it into a mesh collider. And that took a whole lot of work with the AI to get it done. But I eventually got a good looking mesh, a combined mesh for this section. Um, the only problem is that the camera confiner, it can use a mesh collider, but it needs a convex mesh collider, and basically what that means is um, convex means it's like hollow, right? It can move the camera can move in like a single volume. There's no separating geometry within the confiner. It has to be pretty much hollow inside, right? So basically what it would do, I'd mark it convex. So non-convex, it wouldn't work at all. The confiner wouldn't work at all. But marking it convex, it would take the L-shaped mesh, and it would bridge it into a triangle. That would make it convex, and it would work, but it would have the effect of, it would work, the confiner would work on this side here, but since the collider goes off into here, you could actually go against the wall. So it was no good, really no good. So after I kind of got stumped on that, I was kind of trying to figure out, okay, how do I make a confiner for this sector, right? It's not they call it um it's what's the word now? It's not convex, it's concave. It's a concave shape, right? How do you make a convex mesh out of a concave shape? So I was messing around with tools and trying to get something working like Mesh Baker, and I really couldn't make it happen. It was not. So I had to kind of go back to the drawing board and figure out, okay, how am I going to um, get bounding volumes for this sector here? How am I going to do that? Um, so I think I finally came up with an idea on Friday, which I kind of put into practice. Um, so after doing a lot of restructuring work, I basically have this. Basically what I have is two bounding volumes, right? And they kind of intersect each other. Um, this one intersects with this one here, and what I've done again is, in order to achieve this virtual camera switching, I've come up with a clever system where if the character actually collides with this bounding volume, it'll switch over to this new bounding volume, right? Instead of having to go through a sector. Sectors still work, but it's like a different case. Like you can actually go. And the point is, if you go over to a new volume, the next virtual cameras there, and it'll pretty much look seamless. There'll be no, in most cases, there'll be no hesitation. Um, it'll just, um, it'll just pass over to the next virtual camera seamlessly. You won't even notice it, right? And that's kind of what we have here. So here's the other demo. Um, so basically, we have here in different cases, it will transition because it's still bound. It won't let you go further. But if you go to a different bounding volume, it'll automatically adjust the camera to center the player, and then you get your normal. Um, the only issues surrounding it, like I can see, there's still more polish to be done. But like in this situation, when you're going back, it is going to have a moment hesitation before it transitions through. And I think that's acceptable. There's certain edge cases I still have to clean up, but it's like, um, but it looks good for the most part, and it mostly acts naturally. There's a bit of a transition, like if you go back, it'll want to block for just a moment until it transitions to the next bounding volume. But going this way, it's either one or the other. Like this one's smooth and seamless, but this one is always some. But I could have it the other way around, where you know, the other side would not be smooth and seamless. So it's a really give and take, but like I think it still works pretty good for managing the transitions between different volumes. Um, Same thing with down here. Um, it just kind of it just kind of acts like a natural follow camera, even though behind the scenes you're passing it between uh, two different volumes. Um, and all this is to kind of you still have your wall bounding where it doesn't allow you to really go to the extremes. You're still constrained, right? You're still constrained on the left and right and on the bottom. You can't go too far. So this is exactly what I want, with a little bit of, you know, but to get it to this point, it was far less complex. Like, yeah, there's a couple edge cases to do, and the system's a little bit starting to get a little bit complex, but it's not like the other system where it was absolutely spiraling out of control and it could not handle any more complexity. This, I have to do some custom work, but all in all, you're using a out of the box tested system on top of your functionality, and it's just way better, and it achieves what I want it to do for the most part. There's just, like I said, there's a bit more polish to be done next week, but I can definitely see myself filling out the rest of this test level with what I've come up with here, no problem, and having full good enough transitions now from higher level rooms to lower level rooms, and then smooth virtual camera transitions in these hallway sections where the ceiling is all the same height. So yeah, next week I'm gonna finalize that. Definitely, I'll have that finally in the bag, and I think to wrap up the initial level prototype would just be to fix these doors animations with sound. Uh, after that, after that we'll see. I don't really have too much on the roadmap right now. Um, we'll have to see what happens after that. But that is really about it for this week. Um, yeah. Thanks for sticking around, and we'll see you next week.